What's up, my friends? It is Danny Gallows, of course, and welcome back to part number 11 of my Navy experience, which is going to be talking about Singapore and Malaysia at the same time. And like I mentioned in previous videos, that's because I only had about a day and a half at most in these countries to explore and experience things, so I will be regaling you guys with my tale of both of these countries in one video. Another reason that I'm doing them so close together also is because the trips were close together. There was only about maybe a week or something like that between the two trips out to sea, between the two locations that is out to sea. So we got to experience both these amazing countries at the same time. Now, starting off with Singapore, that was the first country that we visited, and I remember pulling into the port in Singapore. I remember once again I was standing elevator watch. I always took the elevator watch if there was one. Because that was the best view. That was the best view. You guys have to know, imagine, being 90 feet, 80 or 90 feet off the water in an aircraft carrier standing on the catwalk that is running all the way around the outside of the aircraft carrier. That's the best seat in the house, especially when you're pulling into port. And it gives you all, a view of all of the ships, and sometimes there's aircraft flying around, and also the city coming into port. And Malaysia was pretty cool. I'm sorry, Singapore was pretty cool because there were like these little almost like small peninsulas that just jutted out from the land, and there were these houses on these kind of like craggy mountainous islands, not huge mountains but small kind of like hills and stuff like that. Very unique landscape, but nothing too spectacular in the port itself, although we did see one of the Singapore Navy's destroyers out there, or I should say just one of the battleships. I'm not sure if it was a destroyer, but it looked really cool, really dark gray color, and it looked cooler than some of our ships. Yeah, it looked kind of more modern than some of our ships. I also remember standing on the catwalk with my good buddy Stephen Hir, H-I-R that is, and we were standing out on the catwalk together just looking at, he was mouthing off, always making some kind of like outlandish remark. He's just like a ball of energy, just, so comedic, always firing off, sayings and like, getting agitated at people and yelling at people and stuff. And so we're standing there on the catwalk, and we're just taking pictures with each other and just kind of experiencing what it's like to be in that port and kind of like soaking up the environment. And we're also talking about what we're gonna do while we're out there. Malaysia. I'm sorry, I keep saying Malaysia. Singapore was known for its massage parlors and its other kind of nighttime activities, shall we say? So we were kind of excited about getting to experience all of that. And finally, so we pulled into port, we got off, and then I remember standing in line waiting for the buses that went into the actual city, and I remember standing there with my friend Jen again, who I was, and we were just talking about her in Japan, the one who confessed her love for me. We remained good friends, of course, all throughout that, and I remember standing in line, and what we were listening to, I can't remember the name of the artist, the Spill Canvas, there it is, the Spill Canvas, and we were listening to a song like One Fell Swoop. I remember that, standing in line, waiting for the buses to take us into the city. Always music tied to my memories. I can remember exactly what I was listening to. I remember all, that's the thing is, being out to sea, if I can just tell you guys about being just out to sea, at nighttime. I talked about being on night ops before, working on the skeleton crew and stuff like that. But really, it's just such a unique environment, just being out. I talk about music, and the reason I say that is because most of the time when I would stand these watches, we weren't supposed to listen to music. But being out on the catwalk at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of a pitch black ocean, and no one is out there except you and the people who are standing watch inside flight deck control, it's like you're gonna pop an earbud in, every once in a while, and you're gonna listen to some music while you're out there. And that's exactly what we did. All of us did that. And so I always remember the music that I was listening to that time just so vividly, because it's such a visceral memory in my head, just being out there in the middle of the ocean in pitch black while the aircraft carrier is going quite fast. Mind you, it's going like 30 or 40 miles an hour across the ocean. This huge, massive thing, and it's pitch black outside, and you're sitting there listening to your favorite music at the time. It was such a great environment, and and so vivid. Like I said, so we were sitting there, listening to this music. I remember the band that I was listening to, and then of course we were off into the city. And I remember on the first day that we were there, I ended up going out with my buddy Owens, because we were all kind of in groups. We didn't need to we needed to come back with a partner, but other than that, we were kind of like by ourselves out there. So I ended up hooking up with my buddy Owens out there, and we decided that we were going to go into the city and just kind of like explore things. So I remember that we I remember taking a subway somewhere, but I think it was to another part of the city. I remember that the bus dropped us off in a part of the city where it almost looked a little bit like Tokyo. It was like, there were big screens projecting advertisements everywhere, and there were these really cool buildings, very tall buildings, and very kind of like unique architecture and stuff like that. And then after we walked through that area and took some pictures and stuff, we jumped on a subway at that point. It was very easy to get tickets. There was stuff listed in English, everywhere. So very easy. We got a day pass, of course. I think it was like $5 or something like that. And we took the subway into another part of the city because, before we go out, they set everything up for you. The activities officer, they have a literal activities officer on the ship who will, coordinate activities. They'll say, this is where you go to do this, and then you can go here, and then you can go here, and then you can go there. And so we were like, okay, great, let's go to these two cities. First we'll go to this city, then we'll take a subway, and we'll go into this other part of the city, which was supposed to be where like all the activity was going on. And man, were they right, because let me tell you guys, we went into this one part of Singapore, which was like the main city in Singapore, and I kid you not, on each side of the street, almost as far as the eye can see, nothing but shopping malls. And not just on the first floor, but on the second floor, and on the third floor, and sometimes even on the fourth floor. And so you would stand on one end of the street and kind of look down this long street, of a main street with like cars and street lamps and lights and all these decorations, as far as the eye can see, all the way down, right, like to the end of the street. And shopping malls on both sides for like a mile just down. I mean, it was the strangest thing ever. I mean, we would go over here and go through 4 floors of a mall, and then cross the street and go through 4 floors of a mall, and then go diagonal and then cross through 3 floors of a mall. And the strange thing is that you'd think that as you go into these different complexes that there would be different stores, and sometimes there were kind of like here and there there'd be different shops, but for the most part it was the same. I mean, you would literally be walking down the street and you'd see an Apple store over here, and then right across the street, like literally right across the street, there's an exact copy of the store, and then you cross the street and you walk a couple of more like 100 200 feet down, and there's another Apple store on the corner, and then there's it's the same for like every store. There's like identical stores on each place, and you're like, well, wait a minute, haven't I been here before? And it's just because there's so many people. There's so many people in the city that they have to have multiple stores. But there's also cool stuff to see in Malaysia. I mean, so much cool stuff. Just again, just like we experienced in Hong Kong, there were so many electronic stores, all kinds of electronics, new electronics, cameras, and like I said before, like fuses and wires and just electronic parts and stuff like that. But also theaters where like operas were held and stuff like that, beautiful theaters, and fashion. Singapore has a lot of fashion. It is definitely one of the fashion capitals of Asia, of that part of Asia. And we actually, me and my buddy Phil, when we went out one day shopping in Malaysia, there was the second day or it was the very first day, I can't remember. But when we went out shopping, it was probably the second day, later on, right before we left. But the second day, we went out and we got these really, really cool sweaters. I still have it today. It's still hanging up in my closet right now. It's this this kind of gray and off blue striped sweater. One of the coolest sweaters I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I just love it. It's so cool. And he got a green sweater, and it was just the way it was designed was so. I guess it was obviously it was the fashion of Singapore and everything like that. But here in the U.S., it would go over quite well as well. They're just so they look so cool, and I still have it and I still treasure it. But as for what we did, though at nighttime is quite another story, and I won't. Of course, I won't go into too much detail here with you guys because this is a family friendly vlog channel as well. But Singapore does have its nightlife. And we ended up going to massage parlors and had quite a nice experience at some massage parlors there. We also went to this. This one place that was nicknamed the Four Floors of Whores. Yeah, I mean, you guys can, stretch your imaginations as far as you want to, but there are basically clubs in which you could order literally, gallons of like Long Island iced tea for like $5, and there was dancing and loud music and neon lights and women all over the floor, ready to take your hand and lead you into the night, and that we did, that's where I'll leave that part of the story. But it's just that part of my life is also very, very unique and vivid because, I mean, I actually got to experience one of these hotels in Singapore, one of these like one-star hotels where all of these ladies of the evening would take their clients, and being inside of, I mean, I mean, these are hotels that you see in like movies and like action movies and stuff like that. When you go when they go to like Asia and stuff like that, and they stay in these like seedy motels, on the outskirts of the city and stuff like that. Like, I've been to one of those motels. I have experienced that. I have been in these rooms. I have looked out over the window. I have smoked cigarettes in the room with ladies of the evening. I've been there. It's like I've done that. And so it was a very kind of like visceral experience in my life. Again, a very real experience, and definitely learned a lot of things too. Took a lot of experiences away. Had a lot of good times with friends. And that was basically our experience in Singapore. Lots of partying, lots of drinking, lots of good times, and lots of exploring the city too. Because I mean, just being in those malls, Singapore was the place I bought my mother this beautiful real silk. Asian style robe with a white crane on the back, and it's a very bright blue, vivid color, just gorgeous. And I bought that for her. She still wears that today. I believe. I think she still has it in her collection. I hope she does. I hope she didn't throw it away or anything. But there's very beautiful things to buy, but also lots of electronics, lots of entertainment. In all ways, shapes, and forms, and easy transportation. I mean, I remember, like, even just sitting on the street. I had a day where, well, not a day, but like a couple of hours to myself where I wasn't with anybody, and I would just sit on the street and just kind of like write poetry in my notebook, just kind of like take in the scenery. There's a lot of stuff going on right in the city, a lot of good people watching. I remember sitting down and having drinks with my buddy Owens, and at this local kind of like this pub that was there in the middle of the city. Again, bars on each side of the city, right across from each other. You could literally like go to this bar, go across the street to that one. So I remember sitting there and absorbing the city and absorbing the environment. And and the sunny weather as well. I can see that finally it's sunny out today. See, the weather is dictating my stories here. And it was sunny in Malaysia as well, and that's where we'll go next, because like I said, after that it was kind of just, we said our goodbyes to the city of Singapore for the last time. We got back on the ship, we were back out to sea, but only for a little while. It was like a week and a half or something like that, and so everybody was just so excited. For once we were out to sea, but we didn't really care. We were like, oh, we're going back in a week. We're going back to someplace new in a week, so it doesn't really matter. Everybody was happy and everything, and so in just about a week or a week and a half, we pulled into Malaysia. Now, Malaysia, we didn't have much time in either. I only had, I think, 2 days, maybe a day and a half or something like that in Malaysia. There was just, because I had duty one of the days, of course, so I only had about a day and a half in Malaysia. But what I do remember about Malaysia is, of course, what most people already know Malaysia for famously is those giant two towers in the middle of the city with the connecting bridge in between them. And I had the privilege of standing underneath them, and I took my buddy Phil's picture. I was just more appreciative of the architecture. I just loved to be there. But yeah, it was such an amazing experience. I stood right at the bottom of those two towers and looked up, and I got to study the architecture and just be there in that environment and in the city. And let me tell you, Malaysia is quite a busy city. There's a lot of dangerous drivers, a lot of bumper to bumper drivers, fast drivers. You use a lot of caution in the city walking around in Malaysia because there are some nuts drivers out there who are going too fast and too dangerously. But right across from the Malaysian towers, the two towers there was this great again a bar. This great spot, but it was more like a it was a restaurant, but it had one of the coolest interiors that I've ever seen in my life. They had this kind of like jungle themed bar, the like tiki bar, where they have they have like the dried palm leaves and like the tiki, stuff, the candles and stuff like that. And they had that all around the bar. And then you could order once again, you could order these like $5 Long Island iced teas that came in these like gallon sizes. And so we were just ordering those and eating burgers and fries and chicken fingers. And then the interior was really cool because they had these like elevated tables. Like there was even one table that was like, it was like 12 or 13 feet off the ground. It was like this little booth or something like that. It was like 13 feet off the ground. And then they had like an elevated DJ station, and then you'd go up the stairs and there was tables, you'd go down the stairs and there was tables, and there was like all these platforms around the restaurant that were like risen at these different areas. So these booths and these tables were at different elevations, and it was so cool. And then they had skylights, like glass ceilings, so all the light was coming in, and they had music playing all the time. Really, really cool little jungle pub almost that was there. It was called what was it called? Something like Banana Joe's. Joe Banana, something with banana, or maybe I'm remembering that wrong, or something like that. But it was something like that in the city of Malaysia, of course. And then that was our first day after some hectic cab rides, because the cabbies in Malaysia aren't the most polite people. We often had to swear at them quite often to get them to drive us to our locations because they weren't understanding what we were saying. It was really aggravating. But that was basically our first day, just hanging out, eating food and stuff. And then the second day, it was me and Phil, my buddy Phil Nelson, who I went with on almost all my trips, and Boom and my buddy Frederick as well. We called him Frederick, of course his real name was Matthew Newman, but he went by the name Frederick. And again, we were out just exploring the city, but this time we wanted to go to this cool mall that we heard of that was shaped like a giant pyramid. It was shaped like a giant, I can't remember if it was an Aztec pyramid or an Egyptian-style pyramid, but it's one of the most famous malls, if not the most famous mall in Malaysia. It's shaped like a giant pyramid, and you pull up to the outside, and it's got all this cool Egyptian-style architecture and like sphinxes and pharaohs and Horus statues and stuff like that. And you walk inside and there's this big, massive atrium where you can see just all 5 floors of the mall rising up in this triangular kind of direction, and all around in a square pattern of this floors and floors of stores. Again, DVD stores, electronic stores, clothing stores, all kinds of cool fashion. I was still looking for a DVD at the time that played Final Fantasy Advent Children. So I was looking around all these DVD stores. But just to be there, and experience the mall, the bright colors, the clean, shiny floors, and then this pyramid structure. And they had all this like gold-laced architecture and stuff like that. And it was inside this massive pyramid. And we just got to just be inside there and just kind of like experience what it was like being inside that very unique mall. Again, the most popular mall, I believe, in Malaysia. And then, you know, just soaking up the environment too. You know, we stood outside for a little while in the sunshine. They have some like palm trees there and some unique looking trees, and we had a nice taxi ride back and a nice big van back to the city, and we just took it easy. You know, we just took it easy and just hung out in the city and just kind of like soaked up the environment there. There were great spots, you know, to eat by the river. I can't remember. I believe it actually might have been in Singapore. See, the countries are so close together. But there was a big river. I think it was in Singapore. There was a big river running through the middle of the city, and then buildings on each side. And then they would have like pubs and bars lined along the water. And again, fast food restaurants that were Asian style fast food restaurants. So Asian ingredients and stuff like that, and just amazing architecture and environment everywhere. That was basically it. That was our last day, was hanging out, you know, in the Pyramid Mall in Malaysia and just taking it easy. And then we were back out to sea once again. And then after that was finally our trip to South Korea. And then after we go to South Korea, we go back to Hawaii one more time, and I'll tell you guys about some of the experiences. There wasn't much to really tell there, but I'll tell you guys about some of the experiences that I had in Hawaii. I'll probably tell that also in the South Korea video as well, because South Korea was unfortunately another short trip. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thanks for joining me for this part of my Navy experience. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about my trip to South Korea and my little mini trip back to Hawaii as well for the second time. So thank you for joining me, guys. Leave all of your thoughts and opinions down below in the Great White Void. And until the next time we meet, take care, guys. Later.